Hi, everyone. I'm Shanna Groves. I'm with LibertyMom.com and the Definitely Talking podcast. Today, to welcome our very special guest, Emily Ogle. Emily is a dear friend of mine. I have known her for over 5 years. We both have worked together and actually have spent a lot of time with each other. But there are some things about Emily I don't even know. She is an accessibility professional who wants to improve the world bit by bit. Emily lives and breathes advocacy, and she is a stalwart ally for those of us with disabilities, both of us having disabilities. We are both stakeholders in that community. And so today I would like to welcome Emily. Hi.
Hi, thanks for having me on here.
We're very welcome. So glad to have you as our guest. Now, this is airing in 2026, so we are officially talking about a new year now and kind of new hopes and dreams for ourselves and all of that. We're all thinking about our goals and this and that. But I'd like to talk a little bit about history with you too. We both have a shared journey with hearing loss. However, our stories are unique. And, my hearing loss started more in my adult years. I started developing more progression, and yours developed earlier than mine. So tell me a little bit more about your experiences with hearing loss.
Yeah, so uh, I was born with it once, so it started in the womb. So that's as far back, and so, sometimes I like to joke that my experience with like accessibility goes all the way back to the womb because when once you live a life of disability, you have some in when it comes to accessibility. But yeah, I my life living as somebody who's hard of hearing has been just at least interesting in my eyes. I remember like being 3 years old and going to a special school district and talking with learning how to lip read and learning how to talk with people for the first time and like all of those things that you kind of take for granted in terms of your memory development. I, a lot of the things that you experience through development at 3 years old, you don't necessarily remember because it's a natural development. But I remember some of the friends that I made because I was learning something brand new. I was having to be taught something that stuck with me. Because most kids learn how to communicate when they're 1 year old, and I didn't really learn how to communicate until I was three. And but then, it's like my entire schooling was feeling kind of like self-conscious about the fact that I had hearing aids and I was different from a lot of my classmates. And I, third grade, I had to wear phonics ears. So it was this little contraption, this was the 80s, little contraption that I had to put around my neck. I had to take out my own hearing aid to put these in. And I looked like, like a robot practically with all of the gear. And kids were just merciless about that. It's like, now I'm glad that the hearing aid technology has come so far that it's subtle. Like as technology has grown, it has grown smaller. Um, because back in the 80s, all it did was single me out. Um,
Yeah, it kind of makes that label of different. Right now, we embrace difference because it's
mhm.
just a part of the fabric of diversity. However, back in the 1980s, if you and I both have memories of the 1980s, it was a different time and differences were not always celebrated. So having something that othered us was not always a positive experience. Did you find that your early experiences with hearing loss kind of shaped the work that you do now? In your intro, we talked about you being an accessibility advocate, and that's really professionally what you have focused on. So, your early experiences with hearing loss and using the technology of the times, how did those experiences, those emotions, and everything that you dealt with socially and during your school years and on into your adulthood, how has that informed the work that you do today in accessibility?
But I feel like it's a very weavy path to where I am now. Because I grew up reading. And so my mom and I, she was also hard of hearing. We would sometimes just sit on the couch reading together. And we would practice lip reading. And so sometimes in order to not disturb the silence that we were comfortable in, we would lip read to each other. And so reading has just always been a very central focus of my relationship with my mother. And during the early aughts, 2000s, that was when the Harry Potter craze was uh, like up and coming, and the book were coming out. And it inspired me to consider the possibility of, well, what if I became an editor and read for a living? And so that's kind of what I went to college for. My hearing and my disability were always there, but I found reading to be a safe career in terms of access. If I did nothing but read for a living, I didn't ever have to worry about being able to hear on the phone. I never had to worry about um, noises interfering with my ability to do my job because that was literally my job. And I say all of that because I got bored with editing very quickly. I like having variety in my day. And so that led to me being project management. And so my segue into accessibility came through project management. I started managing closed captioning work. And as somebody who lives this, I rely a lot on closed captioning. And I was seeing a lot of things that would not provide access to someone like me. And as I started having more of a voice in the conversation, started saying, hey, by the way, when words stay on a screen when there's no audio, it's really distracting. And the more input I provided, the more people listened. And and then that was kind of like the hook. I've always been good at advocating for myself, but I was really like hooked into this thought that, hey, accessibility provides access for people who are blind to the internet, people who don't have much vision but have some. They can use the internet. And I wanted to be a part of that. And so I went from reading all the way to project management, then into accessibility. So um, my A did not look anything like my Z at the end. So,
That's an interesting perspective. I know that our career journeys, they sometimes are defined by the circumstances that we are dealt, or we have this career path that we've dreamed about since our younger years, and we get into that career and realize it's not what we thought it would be. So you have an editing background. I have a journalism background, and I know that the journalism profession is not what it was when I started my career in the 1990s. It has evolved into, anyone can be a journalist now if they have a blog or a podcast or some type of an e-news magazine, whatever. But I had to rethink it just like you did, is to what do I want to do with the rest of my life, or at least up to this point. And so That is inspiring, I think, for a lot of people out there, especially those who are doing soul searching, looking for another career or maybe for a job or something like that. Those of us who don't have an accessibility background now that you have, what are some suggestions that you would have for individuals to develop a mindset of making sure that our materials, our strategies, and how we operate as individuals is accessible to others?
Yeah, first, I don't want to make an assumption necessarily by how people are defining accessibility, because accessibility as a term I have seen interpreted as like literal access, like logging into your computer. But when I'm talking about accessibility, I am talking about digital access, alternative access, and visual access. So, so let's say you take an image, for example, somebody who can't see needs the context of that image. And so the work that I do ensure that that context is there. I just wanted to provide a very high level, very, very, very high level overview of what accessibility is. And the way that I have been able to kind of keep that mindset always is one, I have my own disabilities that can kind of help shine a light on how other people who don't have it make assumptions. And so one assumption that I see for my own disability is that I use sign language, and I don't. And I am hard of hearing, and I do rely on lip reading and the technology in my ears as well as closed captioning.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't have a disability, you don't necessarily understand what it means to have that. And so in accessibility, it's really important to always just check what you think you know about somebody who's using a screen reader. Screen readers are actually quite versatile. So screen reader is going to read the text on a page. It can read the headings on a page. It can read the button, the paragraph text, the image text. It can read everything. Somebody who can't see any of it can really gain a lot that they otherwise wouldn't have. But somebody who can see that content in front of them can also gain a lot because they may have dyslexia and a screen reader is reading out the content that they can't read. And so if we box ourselves in and think we need to fix things for a screen reader, we are making assumptions about what that disability entails and what that assistive tool entails. And so I just recommend always being curious, always thinking, okay, this is my experience, but what is somebody who's older than me going to think? Maybe somebody who's not new, not as savvy with technology. And so we have this aging population that is growing with disabilities, but they are, they use retail, but it's very scary for some of them. And so it's empathy in design, not making assumptions about what our users already know about what a button is versus what a link is. And so having that curious mindset where you are asking questions. And so I think part of that come with it is not being afraid to ask questions. And the higher up the ladder you go, the harder it becomes to ask the question.
Mm-hmm.
And having leadership that will sponsor, that will um, uh, run an accessibility program really help makes it easier to ask those questions that
Mm-hmm.
no one else want to ask. Because,
Mm.
you know,
And putting
sometimes,
yourself out there as a leader. You know,
Yeah.
the questions that people might be afraid to ask or don't know to ask. The leader puts themselves out there to be the front person of, fielding the responses to the question or gathering research or having a team they work with, they partner with, or maybe they interview the stakeholders who would benefit from the accessibility. What is experience? You mentioned our aging population, and having conversations like with my mom or my mother-in-law about how they approach technology versus maybe how you and I in our generation is very different. And I learn a lot, I think, from listening to their experiences. And so you said being curious is not only something you can apply in a workplace, but it's with your family, with your neighbors, with anyone that you have contact with. You can always be asking them questions and do it in a way that, like you said, having that curiosity mindset is we're not questioning the person because we don't believe them or we're on the defense with them. We ask questions to understand and to build
Mhm.
that connection with people. What do you think about that?
Well, the more questions we ask, the more we'll get. Because as you were talking, I remember I had a cousin whose sight had been slowly going, and she was kind of like making the assumption, okay, I'm not going to be able to work because I can't see these spreadsheets in front of me. So what am I going to do when I reach that point where it's just no longer sustainable? And I was just kind of like, wait, what do you mean? What do you mean you're not going to be able to work? Have you tried this? Have you tried this? Have you tried this? And so if we are asking the question, we may be highlighting things that people don't even realize is available to them. Uh,
Mm,
because you have me who was born with a disability, and then we have you who acquired a disability. People don't know necessarily that they even have a disability. Making sure that we ask questions like, do flashing images bother you?
mm.
Or
They do
does it
me.
bother you to see black and white?
Yeah,
Um, those are
yeah,
the types of questions that can help flesh out um,
right,
a
right. They think,
disability that they
yeah.
don't even know they
I
have.
mean, we do think in terms of, those who have any awareness of accessibility. They think of screen readers, they think of closed captions, they think of physical accessibility like wheelchair ramps and curb cuts and things like that. But we also have to think of accessibility as, all of our brains are wired differently in how we approach the world and how we approach learning and how we approach content in our environment. And understanding that each one of us have unique needs is really, kind of like if we all could have training as teachers to be able to accommodate any learner, then applying that knowledge with the accessibility that we can contribute to our communities, I think is great.
Yeah, I would say that when it comes to accommodation, people get the terms accommodation and accessibility confused. Accommodation means something is missing from this process that gives you access. Accessibility, the best kind of accessibility is the kind you don't realize you're even using. I kind of liken it to like a vending machine. When a vending machine does what it's supposed to do and it gives you the food that you pay for, you don't think anything of it.
Mm,
But the instant that it doesn't work right, you notice
hmm.
and you start complaining.
Right.
And that kind of at the point that we are at with all of our website, we have so many vending machines that don't work for
Mm,
anyone. And the more accessible you are, the more you build trust in general, because
mm,
people will acquire disability if they haven't already at some point in their lives, part of aging.
yep.
And making it normal to invert the colors on your machine so you can see things better.
Yeah.
Making it normal to say, hey, do you want this to speak out loud to you? having that be normal is still pretty rare. I
Yeah,
think TVs instantly, weirdly, do it kind of um, do provide that kind of normalization. Now, when you get a brand new TV, it asks you up front what your accessibility requirements are.
love
And
it. I
it's
love that because for so long I could never find the accessibility settings on the remote. Like you go to a hotel, you're trying to set the accessibility on your hotel TV and it's just so complicated, but it has become more user friendly. I will agree with you. So, um wrapping up our conversation, final question. It's a fun one. As you know, I've asked this on every single podcast episode so far. And that is, what is your superpower? What is something that you feel really good about? Something that you enjoy, you have strength in, skill, and something we haven't discussed yet.
I would have to say that my writing is my superpower. I have always been a writer. In my 20s, I did a lot of it, and I had aspiration of becoming a writer. And then I kind of wanted to go the editing route more. But then it just kind of fell away.
Mhm.
And last year, I just was like, okay, I'm just gonna take an hour and I'm just gonna do this. And I wrote, and I was like, hey, this is kind of fun. And then the next day, I'm like, I'm gonna try it again. And it kind of continued. And I have found that I can actually be pretty prolific. I am writing my 13th book.
Okay.
And
13th book, however, are these books that will someday be available to the public or are they more for you?
no, I took such a long break from writing that I kind of had to teach myself how to do it again. Because words don't come when you're in your 40s, like they do when I was in my 20s. And so it's a lot of like, okay, there's a phrase that I want to use to describe this expression. And I will reread the things that I write. I'm like, gosh, I really rely a lot on dialogue for exposition. So these books that I've written are for me and they're for my enjoyment and they're for my sanity. Because this has been like the greatest stress reliever that I have ever had, I think. And I spend 4 to 5 hours a day
Wow.
writing. And I can write very quickly. So I started my 13th book and I'm already like 150 pages in it.
Hmm.
Um, and so, no, nothing for public consumption just yet. But I do feel like I am getting to the point that I can write some of the ideas that I've had spinning around in my head for a while. And then that might be something I'll start pitching once I actually finish. So nothing for public consumption right now, but
Okay. Well, I will be one of your first readers if you do decide to share. Because we both have a shared interest in writing and books and things. And so I would love to continue to support you and your superpower there. Emily, thank you so much for joining me. And I've enjoyed getting to know you even more so. I mean, fun fact, everyone, Emily and I get together monthly for coffee or for lunch. So we do live very close. And it's been fun because there's some facts about her that I have learned that are new today. Thank you, Emily, for being our guest.
thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun.
Yes. All right. And for everyone tuning in to Definitely Talking, thank you so much for your support. We are excited to be in this new year, 2026, and all the possibilities. Keep in mind how you can be accessibility minded. And Emily is on LinkedIn. If you want to look for her, she is a great resource for that type of information. I hope you all have a healthy and blessed week and rest of your day. Take care.